Howdy, and welcome back to the Ineligibles podcast. My name is Will Stone. You can follow me at Will Stone CFB on Twitter. You can subscribe to this podcast, and we go live every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central on our YouTube channel, the Ineligibles podcast. You can subscribe to us there or Apple Podcasts or Spotify, whichever you prefer. But it's more fun to be in on the live shows and interact. So, a lot to get into. A lot of football last week, this week, big game with Notre Dame, and I don't like to bring politics into this world, but it's my show and I'll do what I want. So, um, I'm I'm pretty I'm heartbroken by what went down in Utah today with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and I'm just praying for our society because it's in a dark place right now, and yeah, it's it just sucks. It's yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Um, anyway, um, praying for his family, praying for uh, our country and our fellow citizens. But let's get to the good stuff. Um, big game, big game this week. Uh, it's we'll kind of get into it. It's more important for Notre Dame to come out the victor because they're already down 0-1. You know, they're already starting off behind the eight ball, and with their schedule going 0-2 against the probably the two best teams. We'll see how USC looks later in the year. Um, but going 0-2 to A&M and Miami, um, that's that's halfway in the that's halfway in the coffin for their playoff hopes. I mean, they would need some luck, I think, to get back into the mix. I'm not saying they can't. Obviously, big brand name, yada yada. For A&M, and not that I would prefer to win this game. That makes things way easier going forward if you want to make the college football playoff. But A&M has more chances to impress the committee later in the year, and they have no losses currently. So a win against Notre Dame, who played for the title last year and who will probably have a pretty good record this year, would be a good win. But it's not the end of the world if you don't do it. We'll get into how important it is from a program standpoint, which I think it's extremely important. Um, but I don't think the world is over if you come up short in this game. And now if you play poorly, or if you just if you look like a bad team, and we just are a bad team, obviously that's very concerning. But if you go up there and lose a hard fought game on the road, um, you know, as much as I want us to break through on a big stage, and especially early, and really set things up for the coming weeks, it would be okay, and we could still bounce back. But it reduces your margin for error. You have to go win. You need to win at least one of LSU on the road or Texas on the road. Um, Both very very tough teams. Obviously, Baton Rouge, tough place to play. Um, so yeah, you'd have to win one of those at a minimum, and then sweep the home. Sweep every other game. You can't. I don't think 9-3 will get you uh, into the playoff if you're A&M. It might, but I just don't think it would. Uh, but from a program standpoint, man, you know, last year was it wasn't a wash. It was a little bit more than a wash. I mean, I think it was one step in the right direction. You had the big win against LSU, um, in prime time, night game, blackout, Kyle Field, uh, big comeback. Like that was awesome. You're 7-1, and you control your own destiny, and then things fall apart. Especially once Le'Veon Moss goes down, things just kind of unravel, and you finish 8-5. So, um, as bad as that was, I think there were positives to take away from last year, but now, like, that excuse is kind of gone. And not that this would be the end of the world for Elko if he can't win this game, but it's a game that he can win. Like the betting line right now, I think it's too high. It's Notre Dame by 6.5. I think the power ratings would have it at like Notre Dame 3.5, which is a pretty good difference in the betting world. So I'm kind of surprised that it's stayed where it's at. It hasn't really gotten bet down, at least from what I've seen. So that's interesting to me. But I think this is what better opportunity for a coach early in his tenure with a fan base that's starved for success to go up to a one of the biggest brands in college football, who's a top 10 team, who played for the title last year, and get a win in their building. That would be huge. And obviously, from a program standpoint, that catches the eye of recruits and potential transfer portal players. But also for this season, putting you in a spot to where you could just sweep the home games, and then obviously Arkansas and Mizzou on the road. And then even if you drop LSU and Texas, which obviously you don't want to, but if you did, you're in the playoff at 10-2. I mean, like this game is an ace in the hole for this team this year. But I think big picture, I think as we get into the matchups and the rosters, in my opinion, this is a very winnable game for this A&M team. And I think I would really like to see a team that's prepared, that Coach Elko and Coach Klein have really, prepared them for this game, and come out with a strong game plan, come out fired up, and playing like they're able to play. That would go a long way towards, I think calming the masses and, and saying, hey, like maybe this is the right guy, and it's, I'm sure you've seen the stat. It's been since '79 that A&M has won against a ranked team out of conference on the road, but there's only been 3 games. Like it's not like that's a long time, yes, but when you add in the other stipulations, like it's out of conference and it's a true road game, not neutral site, and they're ranked when you play, like I haven't checked. I'm sure there's other teams that we beat in that time span that finished the year ranked, but I mean, it's the thing is it doesn't matter. But to do something like that, I mean, just the last ranked road win was 2014 against Auburn, which was a very unlikely win. We've had other chances, and most of those chances have been Alabama, which was very tough, or LSU, which we haven't won over there. But this is, it's just a prime opportunity to really, for Coach Elko and these playoffs, like, hey, like we've got it figured out. This is a really damn good roster. They're coached well, and our program's in a good spot. So that's what I'm looking for. I think it's not sound the alarm if you lose a close one. But I think, man, the upside there with a win is just it's monumental, obviously. Last week, Utah State, A&M wins 44-22. I know, and I understand the frustration because it's been 2 games and we still have we don't really know what we have with this team. Almost everyone else has played at least one Power Five opponent and seen their team play a real game. We have not seen A&M play a real game yet. They just haven't. They've treated both games basically like a scrimmage. I think the first one more than the second, but even against Utah State, we're rotating the offensive line, every couple drives, playing different guys on defense, and the players themselves, especially in the third quarter, looked disinterested, which I don't want to give that a pass. Which you saw their head coach just lied into them during that game, like, hey, like wake the f up. We're still playing a football game. You can't just go out there and just sleepwalk the second half. but you would prefer that not to be needed. Like you would prefer, and it's tough because you're up 30-6 at halftime against Utah State at 11:45 kickoff. Like it's kind of a sleepy game, you know. The first half I thought was really impressive, and then the start of the third quarter a little bit iffy, and then they kind of figured things out before the backups got in there. I think so. Kind of on this note, two teams I singled out that if you follow power ratings, if you follow the ESPN FPI or Bill Connolly's SP Plus rankings, they're still mostly based on the preseason like projections, but they factor in the data that we have for this year. Just it's not it's still very heavily dependent on the projection coming into the year. So you don't see huge jumps. The teams that you do see jump a lot are kind of fool's gold. I think, in particular, Ole Miss and USC, both of them rose several spots in every power rating because they would beat their cupcake games like 60-0, and yeah, like that's cool. You know, I think we'd all love to see that, but I can almost guarantee you that Lincoln Riley and Lane Kiffin are aware of what they're doing. Like they're and look, like I'm not saying that they're only running up the score to impress the models. Maybe they are, but I think it's very obvious that Coach Elko approaches these types of games differently than those coaches do. And just because Ole Miss beat Georgia Southern by 60, but then they beat Kentucky by 3, yeah, like that tells me that these scores of these games don't really matter. And if you watch what we're doing, especially in the first game, like our running backs have 10 carries total. Moss had 3. That was one thing where I think I said last week, I definitely wrote about it in my preview on Good Bull Hunting. But I just didn't want to see the same exact game that we had against UTSA. I wanted to see Moss get 8 or 10 carries, and he got 10. I like seeing that. I wanted to see the defense not be as experimental with their third down packages, and they weren't. They were, pretty stifling for most of the game when they were, you know, into the game and not having dumb penalties. I think both touchdown drives against the starting defense were, kind of fueled by some personal fouls and things like that. And things like I get the face mask, like that happens, but the Torian York late hit, like that's just dumb. Like I think York. I mean, I know he knows better than that. And in a real game, those types of things can't happen. But I digress. I think the models won't have us. As a like I think we've probably dipped a little bit because of our because of the way we played these games, and like even though we see it as garbage time, like you can tell in the post game press conference, Coach Elko was like, yeah, like he kept using the phrase like, yeah, like where the game was, and like he knew at halftime this was like the game was over. Like you can go screw around and still win, but I don't know. I didn't like that he needed to light into them to get them to wake back up and finish out the game. But I think, and he even brought this up multiple times, like we know what's waiting. Like we know about that we're going to South Bend next week, and yeah, like obviously they game prep for Utah State, which by the way, that's another note I have is these teams like UTSA, but especially Utah State plays just a super funky style of football. The the stuff on offense, it was like they'd have 3 guys in the backfield and like an offset like diamond formation, and then they'd run an option, and like on defense they run a 3-3, which no one really runs, and they're blitzing from all over, and like we still handled that well, but I'm excited to see a real to see this A&M team play a real opponent in a game that they care about playing with just normal typical football schemes. So that's what we're looking forward to this weekend. Um, let's see here. Get to my notes. So yeah, we saw Moss with 10 carries. I did like seeing that. Um, I thought, you know, I think in a real game, if it's Notre Dame and it's 4th and 1, I bet they hand the ball to Moss. I bet they don't give it to really anybody else. We saw a couple guys get tackled and not convert those short yardage runs. Um, but it's hard to say, like, without knowing what kind of shape Moss is in. I think Moss looks really good. I think he could go out there and give you 18, 20 carries if you needed to. But I'm curious to see what the rotation is um, against Notre Dame for the running backs. Like obviously I think Ruben is he's good for a few big plays in the game. Can catch the ball really well out of the backfield. And then obviously EJ and Amari run super hard and are both quality backs as well. So I'm intrigued by that. Up front, I didn't love the effort on some of the plays, especially early. Um, the defensive line for Utah State was really small. I thought Crownover just kind of got lazy a couple times and kind of got pushed back into Marcel a little bit. Um, he's better than that. We've seen him be better than that. He was better for really the rest of the game, but just come out and play the way you know that you can. Um, they rotated a lot. Obviously, Trey Zoon goes down. He's totally fine. He will play this weekend. So is Marcel, which I should have maybe led with that. But if you listen to any of the head coach, he was like, "Yeah, Marcel's fine. We've heard that he's practicing. You know, I would expect fully to have Marcel Reed and Trey Zoom this weekend. Um, but that gave a chance for Robert Borden, the redshirt freshman or offensive tackle. He played really well. He is similar to Zune, but with Zune, it's strange because he's 6'6", but he's got shorter arms, which is why the NFL views him as a center. Um, because I know that Will Campbell has short arms, but I don't think Trey Zune is Will Campbell. Um, so I think center is probably best for him long term. Borden, he's got the long arms. Like he looks like a prototypical tackle, and I thought he moved well. I thought he run blocked well. Um, you could still tell he wasn't just like super crisp in his technique, but um, the upside's there for sure. So I did enjoy getting to see him in some live game action. Um, you know, I'm curious what they do on the interior. I think obviously they moved Mark Naboo around quite a bit. Like he would start at center, obviously, and then he'd go to right guard, then he'd go to left guard. And like honestly, I think he's probably better suited to play guard. Um, and I don't know if I think him and Coley are are pretty similar at center. But you've already got two guards, so um, that may be a discussion, maybe for depth or for in case of an injury or something like that. But I think Naboo will start at center. Obviously, your two guards are your bread and butter with Basantis and Reed Adams. Um, there was one blitz pickup that they missed. Either they or the running back missed on the rollout touchdown to Concepcion, which great throw by Marcel. Made me nervous. I don't know if against Notre Dame you can do something like that, but nonetheless, great throw. I mean, I think on Marcel's misses, he doesn't put the ball in harm's way. So far on PFF, he has through two games he has zero turnover worthy plays. So like even they track if you hit a defensive back in the hands and they drop it, that's a they count that as a turnover worthy play. So he's got zero of those so far. Um, the O line, even though they're not perfect, they're only allowing pressure on 18% of Marcel's dropbacks, which is just an elite territory. But it's I don't think that'll hold up the rest of the year. Obviously, I think that'll be closer. If you're in the mid to low 20s, that's like playoff caliber offensive line protection. That'd be if they can keep it around that level this weekend, I like their chances. But a far cry from giving up a pressure on 45% of the dropbacks like they did in 2023. Marcel missed a couple. I thought the receivers missed a couple. They had a couple drops. That's just that's the one thing where there's growth to be had. Like obviously these guys have talent, and Marcel looks to be improved, but that chemistry isn't perfect. Like they've only had one spring and one fall together, and now 2 games. Terry Bussey is getting better, I think. Still learning the position a little bit. He probably should have sat down in that zone and waited on the throw instead of carrying on. And it looked like Marcel missed him. I don't want to spend too much time. I need to get into the actual Notre Dame breakdown, but biggest thing on offense, I love seeing the 2-minute drill at the end of the first half. I thought that was big. You don't get a lot of chances to practice that live. I think it's probably the biggest benefit of games like this is to get an opportunity to have that 2-minute offense. And they went down and they got in the end zone. So with a minute and 40 something seconds left. So really enjoyed seeing that. Defensively, run game was pretty good. Coverage pretty good. Obviously, Cassius Howell, 3 sacks on 3 plays in a row. Never seen it before. The next day, Myles Garrett has back-to-back sacks, and it was just a good weekend for Aggie defensive ends. But I think Howell is incredible. 6 sacks total on the day for the defense. Marco Jones had one, also forced a fumble. Sam and Pimba had a forced fumble and fumble recovery on a sack. And then Scooby got one on a blitz where he looked really good doing that. So overall, excited to see this group against a better O-line and see what they can do. DTs, they played really well. I kind of feel bad for David Hicks because he could have 2 sacks right now. I think the sack that Kennedy got against UTSA, if he doesn't get it, Hicks gets it like a split second later. And the same thing on one of Howell's sacks this weekend. If Howell is just a little bit slower, that's two sacks in 2 games for DJ Hicks. So I think he's starting to come along. I love what Regis and Onyedem are doing on the interior, and linebackers were good. I thought Chappelle was improved from game 1 to game 2. Des Ricks has. I think he leads the country in snaps without having a completion on him with like 52. So I think he's been improved. Safeties were fine. I thought the only downside or only negative here was Will Lee, and we know how good Will Lee can be. And he was all SEC last year. He shut down. He probably had some of the best cornerback play that we've had here in decades. I don't know if he's just bored or just not into the game because there's some plays where, like he's got his guy locked down. If you watch the all 22, but then obviously just like, completely guessed or just gave up on some of those plays and like was playing catch up like on the long pass on that one of the first drives and then on the touchdown in the second half. I think he's better than that. I think those things are what I want to see cleaned up and just overall more energy and physicality from the team, from everyone on the team. I think it can be improved. So, going to get into the Notre Dame preview, we just don't know, and we don't really know that much about them. Having just the one game where they didn't look great, and we have 2 games of A&M where they scrimmaged basically. It's really, really difficult to get a read on this one. We talked about who needs it more. We talked about the spread. I pulled a couple of interesting stats, which I've tried to get into more on here. I think it's a big part of how I view the game, and I think it'd be beneficial to discuss that with you guys. So Notre Dame had one of the best defenses in the country last year by every efficiency metric, adjusted for opponent or whatever else. Like they were freaking top notch. And you can watch, like you can see with your eyes when you watch them play. Like you go watch the Georgia game in the playoffs last year. They just played their ass off, and they were downhill. They were physical. Um, Georgia couldn't do anything. Like I think on the first drive, Georgia went backwards for like three straight plays, and then punted, or maybe had a flag or something. But like they just had so much energy and so confident, and like you could not move the ball hardly at all on these guys. Even Ohio State, kind of had to scratch out 34 points or whatever it ended up being, just to get that. And so coming in, like they lost some big players like Xavier Watts. The defensive tackles are both gone. Jack Kaiser's gone. But you know, and I think the biggest difference is the defensive coordinator. They had Al Golden for all three of for Marcus Freeman's first 3 years there. He's now with the Bengals. I think if he was back, I think you would see a different game against Miami. I think they probably win if he's still the DC. They just played too passive, and I don't know if that's a Chris Ash thing. Because with Freeman being a defensive coach, it's hard to know like who gets the credit. Is it Golden? Is it Freeman? Both were good coaches in their own right, but the level they were at last year was just a different, like an elite level, and they were not that the other night. So I'm really intrigued. Was that an off night? Was it the heat in Miami? Was it the humidity? They had guys, cramping up and complaining about the heat, and the left tackle had to come out of the game because he was overheated. He was trying to eat a popsicle. That's not a joke. That's what they said on the broadcast. Um, but their defense, I think, especially and even last year, their front seven didn't have like the bona fide first round pick type guys. They have some in the secondary. They have guys at corner that are those kind of guys. They even had a guy go down who still went in the first round, I believe, Benjamin Morrison, and then a freshman takes over. He'll be a first round pick in 2 years. He's a stud. Leonard Moore, Christian Gray will be a draft pick. Probably first second round. But in the front seven, it's just a bunch of older guys that are just solid. Especially at defensive tackle. They got mauled against Miami. You look late in that game, and especially 47, like he's getting straight up pancaked by that Miami offensive line, who's a big O line. They're good. I think we're good too, but they're not very big. They're not overly athletic. I don't think they get off blocks particularly well. And I think the backers, I think we can get to the second level a little bit and have success in the running game with Moss and Reed, which we'll get into. At defensive end, I think Traore, number 5, Abubakar Traore, he's really good, really talented. Missed most of last year with an injury. He's probably the best of the bunch. The other guys, I know they're high on Bryce Young. I haven't seen it with him really, and like the other guys are like they're just kind of there. I think the best rusher is probably, or along with Traore, is one of the other linebackers, Kingston Viliamu Asa. He's terrific. He needs to play a lot more for them if they want to win some ball games because he's a terror coming off the edge on blitzes. But like I got way sidetracked here. The stat that I saw that kind of blew me away a little bit was the Notre Dame defense success rate on passing plays. They were stingy against the pass last year. You could not throw on these guys, not consistently, and really couldn't get big plays on them either. Their success rate against Miami was 54%, that means on 54% of the plays, Miami was successful throwing on them. That would have been the highest by a wide margin for them last year, with the exception of the Ohio State game where it was like 59. That's very interesting to me because I think we have better receivers than Miami does. I think we have a more threatening offensive game plan or offensive system with how Marcel can move. And honestly, looking back at that film, I think Beck missed some guys. I know they made some big plays down the field, but there was one of those that was really, really risky, even though they got it. But like he had guys open underneath that he would like. He's like, oh, like I'm going for the kill shot. I'm going deep. I think that Marcel will take what's there, and I think we can have a lot of success doing that because they miss the nickel they had last year, and they miss Xavier Watts at safety, who I think if you watch the NFL, just balled out for the Falcons this weekend. I'm pretty sure it was the Falcons. I saw his name everywhere on social media. He was killing it. So I think as good as the corners are, also like what kind of coverage are they going to play? Like last year, they could just man our guys up and stack the box, and we still ran the ball a little bit. Obviously not well enough, but we couldn't do anything in the passing game because Connor and the receivers played so poorly. I don't think we're gonna get a repeat of that. I just don't. And that's what what I'm so perplexed by. Like maybe it's just a I've got to see it against better teams till I believe it type thing. But you see predictions of like, oh, 24-17 Notre Dame. Like I don't know if anybody's holding this offense to 17 points. And I really don't think it's Notre Dame, like with what I've seen from them. So if they do, I'll come back here next week. I'll say, hey, I was wrong. Our offense is not as good. Their defense is way better than I thought, and we have some questions to talk about. But I just don't think you're going to see an A&M offense get held to 17 points. I think it'll be, well, I'll get to my prediction later, but I think it'll be a little bit higher than that. And then, with regards to Marcel, I think this is one of those games where you can you can take the governor off and be like, hey, which they probably should have put the governor on last week. Like, hey, Marcel, this is Utah State. We don't need you diving and taking late hits and getting hit out of bounds against a G5 team that we're up by 30 on. Save that for Notre Dame. Now, I think he definitely ran it more last week. There was more read option stuff, and he scrambled a little bit more than he did maybe the first week. I think it probably needs to happen more on Saturday. I think this is a game where, you know, you say, look, Marcel, like you have to leave it all out there and still protect yourself. Like don't take, you know, just like don't take crazy hits. You should probably slide a little bit, but we really need that part of his game to be able to really stress this Notre Dame defense. Because I think everything else is there. I think the O line can hold up. I think we can run the ball. I think the receivers and the tight ends can both play a factor. I think even if they man us up, I think their corners are bigger guys. And if they were playing, say, at Clemson or someone like that, who's got the bigger receivers, even Ohio State last year, they I think Jeremiah got him a little bit, but they still did a pretty good job. But those are bigger guys. Like our guys are 6 foot, 5'10", and just like blazing quick and fast. Not to say we're going to go out there and just light them up, but I'm curious how those matchups go because if you play as if you try to play press man and if we get by you, like I mean, that's an explosive. That's a touchdown waiting to happen. Now against Miami, they played more zone and they still got ate up a little bit. So really curious to see what their game plan is on the back end. But yeah, it's a good Notre Dame defense. They are not bad. I don't want anyone to think that. Probably one of the better ones that we will see this year, if not the best. I think them and Texas are right up there together. But I think it's not what it was last year, and I think there's a big chance for us to have quite a bit of success on offense. Now, where I think people have some real questions is our defense and their offense, specifically their running backs, which are great players. I think Penn State gets a lot of love for their running backs. Best duo in the country. For my money, it's at Notre Dame. It's Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price. Those two guys are bona fide studs. They both are. Price is maybe, you know, he's right up there with Love. I think they're both, you know, day one, day two draft picks, easy. Love is probably a first rounder. Price is probably a second rounder, in my opinion. They're incredible. Which begs the question: why didn't they give them the ball against Miami? Love Love gets 10 carries. Price gets six. They're all on one drive, and then he fumbles. Never sees the field again. That's dumb. I know that Miami has a good front seven, but you got to feed your best players. Like the game plan from Notre Dame against Miami, if we see that, we're going to win by two scores because that's just not conducive to having success against us, or anyone for that matter. Like everything was, the first drive was just, you know, receiver screen, receiver screen, receiver screen, tight end screen, tight end, hitch or out or, and I'll give them credit. Like they got the backs, they got Love involved in the passing game, which I think is frightening for our defense. But it still wasn't enough. Like, I don't know why he's not getting 18 carries and why is Price not getting 15 carries in that game. And honestly, what saved him was, you know, CJ Carr, the quarterback for them, in his first start. Although he was fine, I think he will be really good eventually. I don't know why they called the game the way they did. I think like they were treating him with kid gloves, and they were saying, "Oh, like complete these nice little easy screen passes," and they did it so much that Miami knew they were going to do it, and they picked one of them off. Which probably cost them the game. So I don't anticipate them to do that against us, where it's all just kind of side to side. I would expect them to just try to run right at us with those backs and to keep doing it the whole game. Another success rate that I thought was interesting was last year against A&M. I believe no, yeah. So A&M in that opener held Notre Dame to their lowest rushing success rate for their offense of anyone the whole year by a lot. Like they were typically 45% or higher in rushing success rate. We had them to like 29%. It didn't feel that way because they had the long runs. They had two or three explosives that really killed us and pretty much won them the game. Which obviously you don't want to have those either. But and I don't think that we'll go out and replicate that same success. I don't think we're going to hold them to that low of a success rate on the ground. If we do, we have a big conversation to have next week about how good this team can be. But I don't think that's what we're going to see. But I do think you will see Elko be aggressive in the front seven. You know, slanting, twisting the defensive line, some run blitzes, those types of things. I think they're going to try to put them behind the chains. And if you give up a 10-yarder, 15-yarder, then, hopefully I think they'll treat the back end in a way where they can clean some of that stuff up and not give up the 75-yarder, because I think that kills you in this game. But I don't think they're just going to sit there and just let them, churn out 5 yards, 8 yards, 7 yards. I think they're going to be, really key, because I think what's different this year is that we really trust our guys on the back end, especially like because Notre Dame does not have a top, like if you ranked all the receiver rooms that A&M plays, it's definitely in the bottom half. I mean, it's probably in the bottom third, if we're being honest. Just taking into account LSU, Texas, Auburn, Mississippi State, gosh, maybe Florida. I don't know, but Missouri, definitely behind them. They're not bad players. They're just not. They're not super, super, you know, high quality NFL guys. I think it's a matchup where A&M should be able to dominate, playing man or some pattern match coverage on the back end. Um, I don't think we should, be giving up huge long passes and blowing coverages, which I don't think I've really seen us blow many coverages in the first two games. Has not stood out. I think Chappelle. I think he can really, cover their slot guy. Faison. He's very quick, and can eat up yards on screens and short passes. But I think Chappelle can really, kind of keep him in check. Which that should allow us to play more aggressive in the box and really key in on Love and Price. So yeah, I mean, look, I'm trying to think of what else I got on this. I mean, I've thought about it for the whole week. And we leave tomorrow morning to go up there this weekend, and it's like I'm fired up for this one, and you know, I I'll say this: my official prediction, which if I'm wrong, I will come back here and own it. I always do. I think A&M wins this one like 31-20. Um, that's where I'm at. I if and but that's dedicated on us coming out and treating this game like a real game, which I think, you know, what I didn't get into was what have our coaches been holding back the first two, because we've seen a lot of stuff, on both sides of the ball. I mean, on offense, um, you've seen screens, you've seen play action, you've seen a lot of different concepts and shoot a lot of different guys playing just on the field in general, like a lot of names to keep up with on the just in the rotation. But there are still things without a doubt that they're holding back for Notre Dame. Um, I think they probably wish they had, one more game of tape, even against, a cupcake game, to see what Notre Dame is going to do, like especially on defense. Just having the one game with the new DC. But yeah, I think, it's a big barometer for me to see, how good is this coaching staff right now? Like, do they have these guys really ready to play? And do they have a good game plan and all those types of things? Because from a talent and matchup perspective, I think A&M, absolutely can win this game. But you can't come out lackadaisical. You have to come out fired up, aggressive, and you know, which I think they will. I mean, I think they've been holding that back, which they shouldn't have been. We already talked about that, but I think I want to see that. Uh, I'm I've had my fill of the cupcake games against the lesser teams with the wacky systems, and I've gleaned all I can glean from those two games. I need to see it against a real opponent, and yeah, I can't wait. Um, Before we go national, do I have anything else for this game? Um, I do think Carr is really good. If they let him loose a little bit, um, that could be scary. Oh, on the tight ends, um, this affects their running game quite a bit because you saw them struggle in short yardage against Miami. Um, they have one tight end that's healthy. Everyone else is hurt, and he's an average blocker, and he's you know maybe an above average player. Like, he's not anything super special at tight end, but when they get down there, like on the goal line, they just bring their receivers in. Like, A&M has seven tight ends, and they'll run those three tight end sets on the goal line. Notre Dame can't even do that. They have one guy. They have one guy, a big receiver, and like their other little small receivers out there, and they couldn't get yards on short yardage. And I think that's a big disadvantage to not have some big guys that can block on the short yardage. So um, I think I think our tight ends will play a pretty big part of this. I thought, um, that's something that Miami didn't really have. I think their tight ends are good players. They're not really blockers. I think 87 and 17 will be on the field a lot in this game to help run the ball. Um, I'm really intrigued by Nyblack. If he can get going, I think if you do get locked up on the outside, um, which I think at a minimum, I think Bethel Roman is an outside guy pretty much all the way. The other two, our best two, KC and Craver, they can kind of rotate who's in the slot and who's out wide. So you're not gonna like one of those guys is gonna have a good matchup pretty much every single play, because more like the two corners, Moore and Gray, are gonna cover the outside guys. Like no matter what. So I'm intrigued to see how Klein approaches that with trying to attack in like from the slot receiver, and from the tight end as well. So I think this offense can be really really threatening, and it can really stress the defense uh, with the you know with the O line being old and physical, with the backs that we have with Marcel, uh, his ability to operate the offense and take the easy play, and run the ball. And then the speed at receiver is obviously a game changer. The tight ends are deep. Like this is a really really talented offense. I don't see us going in there and just not moving the ball. So but we'll see. I've been wrong before. It'll happen again. Hopefully not this weekend. Hopefully I'm right about that. But yeah, that's our Notre Dame A&M preview. I'll be there, section 103. If you're there, give me a shout. But give me 1 second, and we'll get into some national things. Very very interesting weekend of college football. Okay, so I guess I'll lead with Florida. Um, they they're done, man. He's done. Napier's done. Um, I think it's 50-50 if he's even the coach when they come to Kyle Field. I don't think they win a game between now and then. I think they lose to LSU this weekend, lose to Miami, and lose to Texas. They'll lose to us. Um, you know, I, it's hard to go against the grain on some of the off-season hype because, and I'm not trying to diss DJ Lagway. I think Lagway is super talented. I'd love to have him here, but the the hype was not commensurate with what we saw. Like in as good as he is, I think people got way too ahead of themselves because they closed the year by beating LSU and Ole Miss, which Jackson Dart threw like three picks in that game. Um, but like the whole time, like they're like, oh my gosh, like Lagway and Sellers and Nuss and like Arch and like oh my god, like all these good quarterbacks, like Mateer, which he's actually pretty good. But like no one has talked all summer or is talking now really about Marcel Reed, and that's fine. Or A&M, like we haven't played anybody. That's totally fair. But to hype these guys up all off season and just lay a complete egg, DJ played horribly in this game. Um, just overthrowing wide open dudes like for touchdowns. Um, he is still coached by a moron in Billy Napier. Um, Sorry, he sucks as a coach. Like he's not going to be good ever at Florida, and they're going to fire him this year. I can bet you money they will. Um, so yeah, I'm sick of the hype. I'm sick of hearing every offseason. I think I say every offseason. This one was bad. This one was, you know, Lagway and Sellers and Arch and Nuss are the greatest quarterbacks ever, and A&M has a bad quarterback, so they're going to be bad this year. And I just I don't agree with that. I can't accept that. So um, So yeah, Florida's cooked. South Carolina, you may see this score and say, oh, like they kind of handle their business against South Carolina State, an FCS school who's not very good. Sellers started the game 2 for 8 with like 10 yards. They needed 2 punt returns or maybe a punt return and a blocked punt to even be in the lead in this game. The team they struggled to beat at a neutral site, Virginia Tech, Vanderbilt just beat the piss out of them in Blacksburg. And who do they play this weekend? Vanderbilt goes to South Carolina, I believe, to take on the Gamecocks, and it would not shock me one bit to see Vanderbilt come out of that one. It's interesting when you look at our schedule, and I've heard this elsewhere this week. It's pretty obvious. Some of the bad teams coming into the year that A&M plays are looking a lot better. I think Mississippi State looks better than I thought. I think Missouri looks a lot better than I thought, especially the quarterback Pabula. He's throwing the ball really well. I think Auburn's a little bit better, and maybe Arkansas, TBD. Texas worse, Florida worse, South Carolina worse. So we'll see when we get there, but I think the way things are shaking out is very interesting. Um, who else SEC wise? Ole Miss. Simmons has 4 picks already, and I think he got hurt as well. So they, I, it may be that Stoops just has Lane's number. Like I know that Ole Miss won, but after what happened last year and as close as this game was, um, maybe Ole Miss will go out and just destroy Arkansas. I don't think they will. But Ole Miss, I kind of had eyes on them. I'm like, like could they be, playoff caliber? I don't think they are. I think Tennessee, you know, I'm not buying in just yet, but I'm really intrigued by Tennessee, Georgia this weekend. I won't be able to see it because I'll be at our game, but I couldn't tell you what's going to happen in that game. I have no clue. Um, s- some interesting stuff on Gunnar Stockton. I think shout out to JT. I don't know if you're listening, JT, but he tagged me in this tweet that something like 35% of here we go 31% of Gunnar Stockton's throws have been behind the line of scrimmage. 31. That is the most among power conference quarterbacks. He is 1 for 5 on throws 20 yards past the line of scrimmage. So um, I I'll holster my Noah Thomas. Uh, I don't want to say slander, but my Noah Thomas take on him being just uh, a practice superhero. So far, he's done nothing in games. Um, Tennessee has both starting corners out. If Georgia can't beat them, when they talked so much about how great their receivers were, um, yeah, I've got my doubts. But uh, their offense just looks bad. I mean, I don't know why they held on to Bobo. Like they should have fired Mike Bobo. He's not a good coordinator. They have not ran the ball well or really done anything well with him being there. They still don't seem to be running it well. Yeah, you know, halftime it was 14-3 over Austin P, another FCS school. So um, I don't know. Could be interesting. Um, Oklahoma, I think they're good. I don't think Michigan's very good. I think that Mateer could have had several picks in that game that were dropped. Um, I think the Red River, I think that is a very interesting game this year. I think Oklahoma is quite a bit better than we thought. I think Texas isn't quite as good. Um, we know that game gets crazy. Circle that one for a couple. I mean, I always circle it, but that's going to have implications for the conference. Um, Texas, the discourse on Arch. I I think Sark is a good coach. I think he's a you know decently likable person. Uh, the opposite of Tom Herman. I did not like his answer when asked about Arch's health. You guys know what I'm talking about. You saw the comments about I don't take pictures of you in the bathroom, so I don't know what your face looks like. Just a weird response. Very bizarre. I've seen Texas fans that are just very convicted that he is hurt, and I've seen other ones. Shout out Ghost, who's like, no, he's not hurt. We're just coping. So I don't really know what to believe, but Sark seems to believe that seems to imply that he's not hurt, that he's totally fine. They had some luck in this San Jose State game. Not lucky to win, but what they have like four turnovers in the first half. San Jose State did. Gave Texas short fields. They got easy points. When you look at the success rate difference, shout out to Stats War on Twitter, Parker Fleming. He puts it out every week. The success rate differences. I think his tweet is, "Did we really get beat that bad?" Which success rate, is just kind of it strips out the explosive plays and kind of weirdness and just says, "Hey, on a per play basis, like who was better in this game?" And you'll have some blowout on the very far right, and like A&M was, A&M improved week over week with a much bigger gap between A&M and Utah State than it was against UTSA, which is a positive sign. Even with the score that Texas had over San Jose State, very narrow margin of success rate. So they were not good on third downs when they actually had to drive the field. I think only 17 points came from drives that started outside of their own 50-yard line, or outside of in their own territory, basically. So yeah, it's they get, I think, two more warm-ups. They get well, I don't know. I know they get Sam. I don't know who the other one is. I don't know who they play this weekend. Oh, it's UTEP, and then I think Sam, and then Red River. So we get 2 weeks of nothing to know about Texas with those two opponents. Kind of like A&M to start the year, but Red River is going to be a absolute battle. And I think the whole conference is. I don't think anybody. I don't think even LSU or Georgia or Texas feel like, yeah, we can run the table. Like I don't think anybody's confident. Like LSU struggled against La Tech to move the ball. Their defense was good, but Nussmeier is, I think he's got one touchdown on the year, like something crazy like that. Just not super crisp. They got a couple injuries. The offensive line isn't great. So, man, like this is just one of them years. It's going to be one of them years where we don't know what we're going to get week to week, and things set up to where A&M could have a very very successful season, but it's nothing's guaranteed. I think things are a lot closer. The margins are much slimmer. I think in all the games now that we were looking at, coming into the year. So yeah, like every week's going to be a battle, and I hope they're up for it. I think they are. Elsewhere, you can sell your Clemson stock. They will miss the playoff, in my opinion. They may lose this weekend to Georgia Tech. Arizona State, it was fun while it lasted. I think you can probably knock them down a couple of pegs. Honestly, I've got my eyes on three out of the Big 12. You guys know I love Utah. I think they win the Big 12. I'm pumped to see them play Texas Tech here. I think next weekend. I've been saying that all offseason, and I'm looking forward to that. So, I think Tech, Utah, and TCU is the other one to watch out for. Josh Hoover playing very, very well. And Baylor can still score enough to, be dangerous. K-State is ass. I talked about, four good teams and have not mentioned Iowa State yet, who's right up there with the rest of them in terms of the Big 12. So it's interesting. I'll tell you, like, I've heard this on some other podcasts, and we talk about the Big 12 being, a fun league, a league of parity. There's some really, really bad teams in that league. I think West Virginia's pretty bad. I think Houston's pretty bad. Um, Colorado is not great. Yeah, it's the bottom of that conference has really fallen out. Arizona, not great. Elsewhere, Big Ten, Oregon. I may have been too low on Oregon coming in. Now that's maybe this is just one of those weird vengeance games, or someone pissed off Dan Lanning. He's like, you know what? I'm just gonna go. I'm going all in on this one, and we're gonna run it up, which they did, 69-3 or whatever it was. Um, I think they're right back in it to contend again this year. Michigan, no. Um, Penn State, Ohio State, obviously. I'm not very confident in my Washington pick that I had a few weeks back, about being high on them. Um, Really intrigued by USC. I'm not a big Maeva fan. Um, I'm still pretty pissed off that we lost to Peyton Thorne and Jordan Maeva. Jaden Maeva. I think he's pretty mediocre. Um, but they've got great receivers. I think obviously we saw that in with our own eyes. But um, those two guys, Lemon and Jacoby Lane, are great. Um, they could be in that mix. You never know with like they play Notre Dame later in the year. Uh, could be interesting. I think Miami is good. I think they'll win that conference and be in the playoff. Um, could the best teams in the SEC be A&M, Texas, OU, LSU? I I don't know. Uh, the like I don't know. It feels like Bama and Georgia are slipping. Um, Maybe I'm wrong. I watch that Georgia game this weekend, man. I don't know. I'm not saying they're going to lose, but um, I think Tennessee's better than I gave them credit for, and I don't know if Georgia is great. Um, but yeah, I mean, uh, that's a lot of info in 1 hour. I thought I'd go a lot longer, but um, I've talked about this game so much in my head all week that it was good to get out my thoughts succinctly and get my point across. I think A&M wins, like I said earlier, 31-20. Um, I think we move the ball. I think we limit them, on the ground, and I think they show up prepared. So um, if they don't, I'll be back here next week. If they do, I'll damn sure be back next week, breaking it all down. But in the meantime, love you guys. Be nice to each other. Love each other. Um, you know, I think we can do a lot better than what we've been doing as a society. So, but have a great week. If you're going to the game, safe travels. It's football season, baby. Enjoy it. We'll talk next week. Bye bye.